My name is Tim Lindsay, and I'm a 7th grade social studies teacher at Warren County Middle School. During the 2018-2019 school year, I had a conflict with a parent that involved a project grade that brought down their child's overall grade. We had this project during our Age of Imperialism unit, and during this project, we had two parts with it that had to be submitted through Google Classroom. Most of my students did not have the experience or know-how to submit their projects through Google Classroom. So of course, I led a class-wide demonstration on how to submit projects through Google Classroom. During this demonstration, I had a group of students who were talking and having conversation and were not being on task. I redirected them several times and they still were talking and having conversation. Most of my students in the class submitted their projects, but some of the students who were talking in that group did not submit their project the correct way through Google Classroom, and I went back to check later that day. One of those students was a boy who I refer to as Jay, and Jay had an IEP that involved several accommodations and modifications for his assignments. However, because he did not submit his project, I felt that he still had to receive a fair, basically grade that other students would have received. They did not submit their projects. Because I had to give him that grade, which was a 50, it brought down his overall grade. When you add that with the project and as well as his overall grade, it's brought his overall grade down. When we had report cards come out about a week later, I met with Jay's mother and discussed why his grade was low in my class. Obviously, Jay's mother was not pleased. She was not happy with the grade that he had. And she asked what can be done to rectify this. What I didn't understand from her is that she wanted me to have a solution to fix his grade at that moment. I thought she was referring to in the future with his future classwork. So of course I gave advice regarding him to staying on task, being focused, and seeking help when needed. She was not happy with the advice I gave her. She was very upset. Her body language was confrontational as well as the language that she used. And she said in front of me and my other colleagues that were with me that she had a solution to rectify this, and she walked off. A few days later, I received a strongly worded email from Jay's mother, which she copied and sent to two lawyers from a legal aid service, as well as to our principal, saying how I enjoyed having students fail, how I don't help students succeed academically. And of course, that email made me really upset. I just couldn't understand why she sent that email and where she received the notion from I wanted to see her son fail when I wanted to see him succeed. So, of course, I was upset, and I already notified administration and Jay's case manager of what happened regarding the project before she sent the email. And then I had to notify my administration again of the email she just sent. So they were just in constant communication and contact with me regarding that situation. I talked to my TFA leadership coach later to discuss the situation and just basically share my frustrations with him. And he challenged me by saying what would be best for the student. And I had to think for a moment because to me, I felt like what was best was for him to learn his lesson and for him to improve in the future. But what my leadership coach was trying to help me see is that the situation was not about the mother or the fact that I was being challenged with my teaching strategy. What the solution I need to find for this problem was what would be best for Jay. So I had to reconcile and do a lot of self-reflecting, and I decided that what would be best for Jay is for him to redo the project because I will still have access to his grades. It will still boost his term grade for that report card if I go back and add that new grade in. So I spoke to my administration about this, and my principal thanked me for showing maturity in that situation, despite how the mother reacted. And she even said herself, as a teacher, when she was a teacher, she don't know if she would have showed the same maturity as I would have shown. I spoke to Jay's case manager, and Jay's case manager told me that the mom thanked me and that she was grateful for what I was able to do for her son. And what that experience taught me was that with students with disabilities or learning challenges or difficulties or struggles, We have to be willing to step outside of ourselves and realize just because students without those disabilities are able to succeed, stay on task, or the high levels of expectations we have for them, we still need to reach out and be able to modify, adapt, and adjust to help them meet their needs. Although it took some selflessness from my part, it further just instilled in me the selflessness as a teacher that I'll have to put forth for all of my students. Whether they get it the first time, get it the third time, or just get it the 10th time, I need to be willing to reach them because every student has the opportunity to learn, and I need to make sure that they're given that opportunity equally. Teach for America's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusiveness made me think about my why for joining Teach for America and for becoming a teacher. And my why is to make sure all students are receiving equal motivation for their learning, whether that be through what we're learning in the classroom or what we're talking about that relates to things outside the classroom, making sure that students are equally motivated and are all given the same push and the same high expectations and not receiving the lower expectation that does not basically meet the standard of excellence that I want for my students. In terms of inclusiveness, this year I've become more open-minded when I talked about what students will want for their future and hearing what they're interested in as well, trying to affirm them. And last year I was I heavily emphasized college education to a lot of my students. While some of them did not want a college education, they wanted to get into a trade such as welding, becoming an electrician, and going to catering. To me, I felt that college was the most important thing for them to hold to and grasp on. However, I should have still affirmed some of these students, especially with them being so specific at a young age with what they wanted to do. So this year I made sure I try to talk about whatever trade they go into for them to become entrepreneurs, to have their own business and to manage their own companies and hopefully enterprises. And also still trying to affirm those who want to go to college and also still trying to give students hope that if they don't have anything planned right now, that there's nothing wrong with that and that they have time to think about that when they get older. In terms of equity, I tried to make sure this year that my teaching practices and my strategies are more reflective of the equity framework that Teach for America's commitment pushes and what it includes, by making sure that I'm not intentionally or unintentionally having systems of racism, classism, other isms, or other systems of oppression within my classroom. Although I know I can't completely dismantle that, I try my best to make sure that I'm trying to have an equitable framework within my classroom and trying to reach all students and not perpetuating certain oppression that they may face out in the real world and society. The framework makes me wonder who or whom wrote the framework. Was it just Teach for America actors and agents, or people who were stakeholders with Teach for America, or did it also include other community members that Teach for America may serve in as well? Did it include parents, other teachers outside of Teach for America, other agents and community members? Who was included in the writing of this framework? It also made me think about how can leaders be committed to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, when they serve in communities that have had gross inequities for a long time, and where certain institutions, such as the education system, has perpetuated those inequities and have done little to no work to rectify them when they have the power to do so. The ways I've seen DEI be aligned in my educational experience was through the differentiation I've tried to include in my classroom and what we try to include in our school in general. Trying to reach different students based on their different skills, their abilities, and also their struggles as well. Because we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to education. Students have different needs, and some students, unfortunately, have a very hard time grasping content. Therefore, we as educators, and especially those within my building, we are tasked with making sure that we reach those students different ways and avenues. and making sure that they're able to grasp the content and material in the best way that they can. I've also seen it align with the way we have team approach with different projects and different initiatives. When we have our PLC meetings, for example, the seventh grade teachers are able to come together and able to plan curriculum, introduce differentiation strategies, and also set SMART goals based on data together through this open discussion with each other. We're able to affirm each other, able to give each other points of improvement, and just help each other in general, best help our students. I felt that that's really been helpful this year through this open discussion that we've had as a team. I've also seen it being shown in the school improvement team, how we're all able to come together as teachers, and also with the inclusion of a parent and a student who's a part of our team, and trying to make solutions for our school to make our school a better place for all students and for the community as well. I've also seen it with the representation of different cultures that we try to include in our school through the bulletin board, through showing Native American Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, and Black History Month, trying to affirm different groups and different people of color as well through different programming and lessons that teachers are introducing in their classroom. The ways I've seen DEI misaligned in my school community is the lack of external and internal motivation that some students are receiving and that they have, especially if they're placed as low performing students and if they've had behavior infractions as well. I've seen as a result of that over discipline of certain demographics such as Black males and Black females, and that kind of relates to that lack of external and internal motivation, where I've seen the two correlate with each other, where we are suspending and over-disciplining and policing certain groups of students. Even for myself and my own educational experience as a teacher, I've seen how I have perpetuated that as well, and have tried to find ways to seek more equity for my students and try to help students as well without having to police them or singling them out. So I've definitely seen that in my classroom and my own teaching strategies as well, and I'm still reflective of that. The other ways I've seen it misalign is through students who have behavior intervention plans, 504s, and individual education plans. They aren't necessarily receiving the counseling they need to basically help them grow as learners. What I mean by that is that they're not really receiving help or instruction to basically help them learn what behaviors not to enact, how to choose better behaviors and choices. And we're not really giving them the proper time to just let them learn and grow and make mistakes. We, again, over police them, discipline them, and expect them to improve after that disciplining, but where they need rehabilitation. So we have a lack of rehabilitation for those students, which I do not believe is equitable within our school. The content we teach is very Eurocentric and also based in American history. Students of color often don't see themselves with this content that we teach them. So I've definitely seen the DEI framework be misaligned in terms of diversity, where we're not showing different cultures, different groups. It is not equitable, as a lot of the problems, questions we may ask students do not relate to their own experiences, and it's not inclusive because it does not include their own experiences as well. And lastly, I've seen it misalign the ways in which we talk and think about students, especially depending on their background, but mostly for students of color. For example, we have a Native American population within our school, and I've had an overheard conversation with other staff members in which they say that's how they all are, or they don't act any better. And also with some Black students saying that they're not going to be anything, just how they are. They're going to be pregnant, or their hair is nappy, or they smell. So I've definitely seen it misalign the ways we think and also talk about students as well.